Good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, Zuko the African gray parrot is perched on his playset behind me, and he is not singing good morning, good morning, good morning. But that's because he's usually shy when he's in a new location. So we will let that go. Starting just a tiny bit late today. And I guess that'll have to be okay. So, we're going to get right into it. Quick recap. What was I doing 2 days ago, yesterday? I guess I was doing this shot. So this is what we did using the 1-2 punch of Krita and Tahoma a couple days ago. Yesterday, I don't know what the heck went on yesterday, but I had a bunch of stuff I had to do and didn't actually do a lot of animate-y stuff. So, this morning I wanted to go in. These two shots here actually didn't even have backgrounds in them yesterday. So, we needed to rectify that. And poof. So, what I'm going to do this morning is just a quick recap of what we have in this shot, because some of that may be informative for those who are using Tahoma or Krita, but it's probably going to be more in Tahoma today, just to clarify that point. Probably going to be more in Tahoma today. So this shot actually combines two shots in one, which is generally frowned upon, but it came out pretty good. So what did I do? Oh yeah, okay, so step one was the background. So interestingly enough, this looks a little, it's defocused. It's actually taken from another shot and is a much bigger painting. So this was used earlier in the show. I hit the old F3 key. So if you're a Tahoma person, hit F3, which for me it comes up on another window, but it brings up the schematic. And then what you can do is add a simple blur effect, which in this case was 5 pixels. Now, I do want to point out one thing about this that was really a bit strange. So I suppose if Darren's out there, this might be something you find quite interesting. Okay, so let's put this in render mode so you guys can see what the render looks like. So basically, it's not real complicated. Let me move this out of the way for a moment. The situation I'm about to describe, you can see how blurred the background is. Okay, and here, likewise, on the follow shot, we're going ahead and defocusing the background. Now, one thing that's missing, by the way, from this shot is the bowl in the foreground that Golik's handing to her. So I still need to do that. But here's the thing that I found kind of a little weird, actually, is that when let me go here. Actually, I'll start here because this is what I was working with when I bumped into this situation. So this is, again, like I said, a little bit strange. What's strange, you say? Well, before I added this over effect, just column 1 was going through the blur. So column 1 is this, and then this is what you saw. So this was going through the blur filter, like so. Okay? Oops. So now, this is basically orphaned because it's not piping through and actually getting to the output. Okay, so just so you know what's going on. Okay, so what I found was really strange, actually, was that when column 1 was going through the blur filter, I had the blur set at, gosh, it seems to me it was like 20 pixels. And it could be it's corrected itself. Sometimes Tahoma does that. But what was really strange was when I took these two layers. The problem being that in this shot, the background is actually, as you can see, because this one's orphaned, the background is actually painted around this clip that is taken from another shot in the show. So I had to combine the two in order to create the larger background. So just so you understand what's going on here. So anyway, I took these two layers, and using the over blending mode, I just combined them. I just mixed them together. And the blur was way stronger when the two layers were combined than it was when it was just one layer going through the blur, which obviously makes no sense at all. And actually, you still see it. There you go. You still see it. Look at how blurred that is. It must have some. I think I know what's going on here. Okay, so now when we pipe this through here, all of a sudden the blur is much, much stronger. Now it's only one blur. It's not like these two guys are both going through the blur or it's being calculated twice or something like that. I have a suspicion I know what's going on here. I'm just guessing. But it's an interesting, okay, dirt is dead. Okay, so I guess I would like to take a moment here and mention one thing to my YouTube followers, which is we see here in the comments that there is a comment from someone whose name is Dirt is Dead. So I just want to take a moment of silence to recognize the fact that Dirt, I can tell by the comment that the person who made this comment is the same person who used to be named Dirt. But now their name is Dirt is Dead. So apparently Dirt is dead. And Dirt is Dead has been Dirt has been replaced by Dirt is Dead. So one moment of silence for Dirt, who is, dead. Okay, there was our moment of silence. Okay, so I suspect what's going on, I guess this is just something to be aware of, people. I suspect what is happening here is that something about the way that Tahoma calculates its blur has to do with the size. The blur is based on a fixed pixel radius. So, and this makes sense actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, so in other words, a 20 pixel blur on a really, really, really big image is going to look, when it's all scaled to a fixed output size of 1280 by 720 pixels, is going to look like way less of a blur than a blur on a very small image. If the image itself is only 5 pixels wide and you do a 5 pixel blur, it's going to be nothing but blur, right? So I think that's what's happening. When I combine these two layers together, Tahoma is also resolving this pipeline right here to be whatever the combined size of these two levels would be, and it's favoring the smaller of the two. Therefore, if only column 1, which is a fairly large image, is going through the blur, it doesn't look like much of a blur. But if you mix them together, it's going to be clamped to the size of this image, column 2, which is smaller. It's actually the output resolution of 1280 by 720. I suspect that this is full HD and this is broadcast HD. Okay. So anyway, just something to be aware of. So when I change this to 5, I'm like, yeah, that's about right. Okay, another thing I wanted to mention. When I was doing the shadows, okay, over here, let's back up here. Okay, so I needed some shadows. Well, this is a sub scene or sub X sheet. Your terminology depends on whether you're a yeah, by the way, I just looked at my comments and I want to say that Dirt is Dead just commented, yep, correct. I want to say that with the metamorphosis from Dirt to Dirt is Dead, I would have to say that there's probably been a bit of an evolution here. because I think "yep, correct" is in fact the longest sentence that I've ever seen posted by the character formerly known as Dirt. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, this is a sub X sheet. So for me, because I've got the hotkey set up, I can hit Control down arrow, boom, and I go down into the sub X sheet. So two things to be aware of here. One is how I did the shadows. When I'm in Krita and I want to do shadows like this, let's see here. Let me see if these, let's see, it's 12%. So I'm going to make that dark. I'm going to make this dark just so you guys can see. So when I'm working in Krita, I just turn on the alpha lock here on the layer and just draw black, and then I crank it down to about 12%, and there's your shadow. Piece cake. Because it's a layer-based compositing system, it just works. Okay, and then just to sort of finish the complete thought is you can grab the whole group here in Krita, hit Control A, Control C, copy it to the clipboard, and paste the entire group as a flat image, basically composite it in the ether into Tahoma. Okay, well in Tahoma it's a little more complicated. In Tahoma you need to actually deal with the shadow clamping through the compositor. What the heck do you mean by that, Dave? Well, as you can see, these shadows actually go outside of Fala. See what's going on? Okay, so just to, you know, just covering this for completeness' sake. The way I'm doing shadows lately in Tahoma is with a vector layer, because the vector layer allows you to hit the B key, and if you have auto close, auto group, and auto fill turned on, you can literally just draw a shape and it does a filled shape, which is really convenient. It's really what I've been, it's the way I've been doing shadows for a long time. It works quite well. Now everything looks real black. And then what I did was I just hit the D key to duplicate this image, because her hand does move here, as you can see. And so I just kept hitting D to duplicate the previous image and then tweak it a little bit. And so there's my shadows. Okay, however, there's kind of a problem. Because the way we actually deal with the shadows is by compositing. There's more than one way to do it, okay? You can use in your effects, you can use, for example, the matte in, or matte out. I don't even remember which it is. I think it's matte in. To clamp the shadow to the character that it's acting upon. I tend to favor using this layer blending INO category, and then I go to multiply INO. It's just what I favor. What it does is it multiplies the shadows over top of the character, and it by default has this turned on, clipping mask, which, as you can see, that's what the clipping mask does. Pretty convenient. Okay, and then I just set the opacity to wherever I need it to be. Anyway, the challenge here was that within the sub X sheet, or sub scene, if I'm using Tahoma, I should probably say sub scene, because that's what Jeremy Bullock, the creator of Tahoma, calls a sub X sheet. He's changed the name. Anyway, her hand moves, which means that we can't just clamp the shadow over top of column 1. We have to combine them somehow. So I could have used an over, image blending, over. Either one of these actually would work. But instead what I did was, anytime you look at your effects schematic, you will notice that all of your layers or levels pipe into the quote-unquote scene, and then out up from the scene to the quote-unquote output. So I guess you could think of it as the scene represents your whole X sheet, but the output represents whatever is going to be rendered out. So instead of fussing around with an over combiner, what I did was I actually just said, well, let's just disconnect the shadows from the scene entirely and put the multiply INO effect here after the scene, and then comp it that way. So we're comping the shadows over top of literally everything else. It just happens that everything else in this sub scene needs to have the shadows over top of it, so that worked in this case. And then that goes to the output. By the way, one thing that is kind of nice, I do like about the way Tahoma's schematic works, is that when you have a sub X sheet or a sub scene, I have to keep reminding myself to call it a sub scene. It's pretty nice that the schematic elements that are visible in that schematic are limited to the sub scene itself, right? So in other words, sub scenes actually become a way to keep your schematic a little less cluttered if you tend to do a lot of post-production effects and stuff like that. So anyway, drinking my tasty beverage, which this morning is coffee. Okay, so that brings us pretty much up to scratch. I'm going to do a quick and dirty render. Control-Shift-R. It's one of the reasons I like Tahoma is because the output settings for your scene, in other words, what's going to be rendered and where it's going to be rendered and what its name is going to be, all that, is baked into the scene in Tahoma. In Krita, it is not. In Krita, you hit Control-R and you literally have to, well, actually, you have to wait for the save dialog to come up. But other than that, you have to wait. You have to re-enter your output settings, even if you're opening an old scene. So if I took this scene, put a bunch of output settings because I want it to be rendered to a specific folder, you know, with specific file names, blah, blah, blah. The next time I open this particular file, all of that information will be lost. It's a pretty big deficit, actually, in Krita. You wouldn't think so, but when you're doing hundreds of shots, which, I mean, let's face it, I'm up to, right now, sequentially speaking, I'm up to shot number 487. So let's make no bones about it. We got the entire episode 1, and so we're up to shot 487 here. Plus, we've got all these shots at the end of episode 2 going up to 789. So there's almost 800 shots. Okay? Trust me, when you got 800 shots that you're juggling, after a while having to retype in the output settings for every shot you're working on gets old. It does get old. Okay, so we're going to have to give Golik, by the way, a background as well. But now let's just go back here and double check this. Okay, so that looks okay. Golik's telling her to refill the bowl. It was really just a storytelling device in order to get Fala out of the room, because some of the dialogue that happens downstream here a bit involves, it's basically private between Golik and Tianara. One thing I do need to think about, and this is one of the reasons why I live stream actually, so I'm just kind of thinking out loud and I can describe verbally what it is I intend to do and sort of get real clear about what my objective is that I want to look at the script and determine whether it's actually just Golik here in the tent with Fala, or whether the soldier is still standing there. We never got rid of the soldier, right? But presumably Fala leaves to go refill the nuts. You know, the bowl of nuts. Very important thing, that bowl of nuts. But this is actually an important point for continuity for this reason. If you look at the sketch, I don't know if you guys can see it, but let's do it this way. I'll go here, transition over here, and then put this as a full screen render. Okay, so the problem I'm going to bump into for continuity here, downstream a bit, is that this drawing from the storyboard has two potential flaws. Flaw number one is that the soldier is not in the drawing. But in the earlier shot, the soldier was holding the curtain open. You know, the opening to the tent was being held open by the soldier so that Lord Golek could come through the doorway. So here we don't have the soldier, but yet the shape of the flap or the cover, the doorway, appears to still be open. So it's kind of like we either need to put the soldier in there or close the door. Take your pick. But probably one or the other should happen. So, I mean, you know, what can I say? Little things like that, you know, they come up. And they can kind of be all over the place. This shot's a little bit of a fudge because, A, it's assumed that the soldier is over here holding this flap open, but B, there's literally nothing holding this open. This is being held open apparently by magic. So it would really be better. I'm gonna come back to this. I'm not gonna deal with this right now, but it would probably be better to go back to this painting right here and put some sort of, well, you know what they call them? They call them wingdingers. In the real world, these are known as wingdingers. Some kind of wingdingers to, you know, hold that baby up. Okay? Just saying. Now, you kind of get away with it because we do have the focal blur on the shot, and it's really just kind of noise, and what you're really going to see in this very short shot, I mean, it's only a second and a half long, is go like handing out the bowl. So can we get away with that? Yes. Definitely we can get away with it. Should we? Well, you know, you go back home and visit with your relatives, and you guys can all have a very spirited debate about whether those wingdingers should be in there. Have a spirited debate about that, and that'll be all kinds of fun. It'll make your holiday get-together much, much, much more interesting than it otherwise would have been. So, with that, I'm going to go in here and start doing a few things that I know darn well need to be done. I've got my oil paint brush, and I just want to kind of tighten this up a bit. I don't have to be super tight with the cleanliness of it, I guess you could say, for the simple reason that it's got that focal blur on it, right? So we got a little bit of latitude on the detail quality, I guess you'd say. How you doing back there, Zuko? Zuko, the African gray parrot, is pretty quiet, actually, right now. He's not really saying too much. Okay. By the way, if you're painting in Tahoma and you are lamenting the fact that what you see as your final render and what you see while you're painting really don't quite look alike, or if you want them to, if you go into rendered mode here and you paint, you have to sort of wait for it to render every moment. You can mitigate that problem by simply opening a new, where's the viewer? Am I looking at the wrong thing? Yes, viewer. You can open up a new viewer, which for me just opened up on a different window, but put that in preview mode, and you know, then you can go ahead and paint like here to your heart's content, and after you've painted a little bit, you look over here and it re-renders. So maybe not the most perfect solution, but certainly workable, right? So we'll go with that. And man, 2 concurrent viewers. What the heck? I think I'm experiencing systematic rejection by my adoring public. My adoring public doesn't adore me as much as it used to. And so people aren't coming around. Well, that's my own fault. Totally my fault, because I sort of disappeared for a bit, and probably people said, well, screw this guy. If he's not even going to be live streaming and stuff, why am I even subscribed? Now, to be totally accurate, that's actually not quite true, because let me check. I'm kind of curious about this at the moment. I'm going to go to my dashboard and just check. Nope. Actually, you see, that's very strange. Actually, I haven't really ever paid much attention to my analytics and stuff, but my number of subs is continuing to climb, not at a fast pace, but at the same pace it's been at for the past year. So there's no change in the subs, but the live stream viewership trickled off a bit. Could be the time of day too. I mean, 10 in the morning. Let's see who else is here. Oh, Inio-san, dude. Yeah, you haven't been around in a while either. We've both been slightly absent. So, anyway, thanks for saying hi. Whoops. What am I trying to do here? Let's zoom out. And so the only thing really remaining on this shot, I'm feeling like the background's pretty okay. Let's just step over here and look at the continuity a bit. So what we've got going on is, let's see. So Monkey slips into the tent, and he sees something he really likes. Mel's getting more frustrated, and he dives down there, and he's going to go into the tent, but then he hears something inside. And Golik has now entered, and I need to look at the script and see what his line of dialogue is there. There he tells Fala to refill the bowl, which kind of gets her out of the tent. Mel's listening, and then Tianara notices Monkey. Which, of course, Monkey does what Monkey does. And then Tianara realizes that this may be an avenue of escape out the back of the tent. And then Golik has a line of dialogue. So actually, this is kind of important. I'm afraid I might have made a mistake where the line of dialogue we just saw is Golik saying, "I see you've come to your senses." Ah, okay. Okay. I better check my... Yeah, I need to go back here. Okay, so sorry about that. So yeah, here's what actually happens. He comes in. Yep, right here, Golik says, "Well, here we are. Your big day." And then overheard here, he says, "Fala, refill this." "Yes, my lord." And then this all happens. And then Golik says, "Well, I see you come to your senses." Okay, so it all makes sense. I did not make a mistake. It looks like I did it correctly as far as the dialogue and whatnot versus, you know, what I actually animated. It's always a bummer when you do, you know, days of animation and find out you made a boo-boo. Busy working at this, and Inio-san. What are you working on, Inio-san? I know what I'm working on. I'm working on a cartoon. What are you working on? Put something in the comments. Let me know. Always fun to coalesce with your tribe and kind of see what creative things they're doing. Always enjoy having lunch with my friend April, who she wrote a book. I actually should plug it here. It's not like very many people are going to see it, but let me see here. If you guys don't mind, if you'll allow me this indulgence, I'm going to look and see if it's on Amazon. Yeah, right here. Here we go. So I had to look up the title. This book right here called Song of Life, a Seven Kingdoms novel. Good friend of mine wrote that. Very dear friend, actually, and she's kind of like me with the cartoon. Actually, she's got this mapped out as a and the name is A.L. De Leon. I referred to her obviously a little bit ago as April. Her real first name is April, but yeah, I mean it's a pretty good book, and she's got a whole series that she's writing. So pretty cool stuff if you're into, like, you know, fantasy or whatever. There's some magic, you know, and stuff like that. Actually, one day, I don't know, it's been months ago, but one day I just for fun I took the first few pages of her book and did a pencil test animation of it, and it was kind of fun to do. Anyway, so we're missing the bowl, and we need to get that in there. And let's see here. Do we want to just smack it over the top of everything else? I guess we could. So what I think I want to do is essentially animate in reverse. So I'm going to hit the B key. Boop. Now I've just created a standalone smart raster level. Okay? And now I'm going to hit the tilde key, which for me solos the current level. Okay, so now that's probably something I should show because it's not a default hotkey function. Okay, this is actually a super useful thing in Tahoma. I don't think it's in OpenToonz. So Inio-san, he's a front-end web developer and graphic designer, so I've been deep into web stuff the last couple months. That's hilarious. That's exactly what my son's been doing. Um, he's been, well, I mean, essentially telemarketing um, small to medium-sized businesses and pitching them on, you know, websites as well as, oh, you know, there's things like Facebook ad campaigns, you know, and then there's of course ongoing SEO functions and things like that. And so, but yeah, he's his business is taking off. It's starting to get some, you know, take on a life of its own, I guess you could say. So it's a great business to be in. I have quite a number of website clients myself. And hey, you know, they pay the bills. Okay, so if you right mouse click on these two little icons, you get a bunch of interesting options. Show this only, show selected, show all, hide selected, blah, blah, blah. Well, and then for this, on this only, on selected, on. Okay, so what does on mean? On means render. Okay, so if I turn this level off here, it disappears in the render. But if I'm not in render mode, I still see it. If I weren't going to see it, I would have to hit this icon and turn it off. Okay? So these two are quite useful, these two icons. They're a little mysterious if you don't know what they do. Well, here in Tahoma, and again, I don't think OpenToonz has this capability, is that you can solo the layer, show this only, which of course I haven't drawn anything yet, and then show all. But the cool thing about it is you can map it to a hotkey, which for me made sense to use the tilde key, because when I'm working in Krita for a long time, my hotkey for soloing the current layer is the tilde key. So I thought it was pretty cool that here in Tahoma I was able to do the same thing. Now you can't make it a toggle. So for me I have to go control tilde to solo the layer and then control tilde to unsolo the layer. So as you can see, show this only is mapped to the tilde key, show all is mapped to the control plus tilde key. So use that if it's useful to you, right? Okay, now the reason the plastic tool mesh here, by the way, is showing up is actually because there's kind of a hidden flaw in my hotkeys that I just showed you, which is that if I solo this layer and then I unsolo it, I'm unsoloing it not by toggling the soloing, but actually by doing show all. It would make more sense to, oh, you know, as Brian Tracy says, do it now. Do it now. Don't do it later. If it crosses your mind to do it now. Okay, so I'm going to configure my shortcuts. And I'm going to go show, and then there is show this only, which when I hit the hotkey. Okay, so just to be clear. So this would be control tilde. And now let's see what happens. Show. I guess I got that wrong. Showed this only. Yeah, I definitely had a brain fart right there. It isn't show selected. Show this only. And it wouldn't be hide selected. Yeah, I'm actually wrong. There really is no solution. Since we can't do a... The only thing show selected does that's different is it allows you to grab multiple columns. I'm pretty sure. So let's just see. I'll grab these columns and hit control tilde. Yeah. So, yeah, that's basically about as useful as a box of rocks. So, sorry about that, guys. I led you down the primrose path and was absolutely wrong. So in this case, because we do not have a way to toggle just turning this on and then off again, we really don't have any option. This is our best available option. So, it is what it is. Show all. And the only time it bites you in the fanny is when you've got columns that you intended to leave hidden all the time, and now you have to deal with returning them off, which of course is a little bit stupid. But as far as I know, there isn't a way to deal with a hotkey toggling function in Tahoma. So, sorry. Which is kind of weird because I don't remember explicitly making it a toggle in Krita. In Krita, the default behavior seems to be that when you invoke a hotkey, invoking it again turns it back off, or does the opposite. So, whatever. In any case, let's solo the layer. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this basically as simply as I can. Let's just do this as a sketch. So, actually, let's put Fala back in there. What I'm going to do is probably about like that. Something like that. Okay, and then I'm using the red so I can see what the heck I'm doing. Okay, that's probably not too bad. Okay, now I can solo that again, and of course it's hard to see what the heck's going on, but it's not that hard. Okay, so there's your bowl, and so how would Golik's arm look here? Okay, so I don't think we're going to see any of this because the bowl is not going to get up this high. It's only going to get about to probably here, and then it's going to be animated in reverse so that we're drawing it here so that we can get the whole. Well, it's probably obvious, but if you drew this where it's going to be in its initial position, like way down here or even off screen, then the problem is that the drawing itself would be and rotate. Okay, and actually another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crank up the smoothing. I don't usually use the smoothing a lot in Tahoma, but it does work pretty well. I mean, it's a pretty solid smoothing algorithm, as smoothing algorithms go. Okay, so you can see what the inherent flaw. And by the way, for me, it's a big one. Okay, the inherent flaw in Tahoma, as far as I talked about this a little bit yesterday. One of the reasons why I like doing most of my drawing and painting in Krita. The reality is that the hand and with the bowl that I'm drawing right now, I probably should be drawing in Krita. But here's one of the flaws that leads me to favor Krita for drawing. No matter what you do in okay, so in Tahoma, it is very cool that you have procedural color. Just like in Blender with the grease pencil, you can change the colors after the fact. So that is a cool thing. However, your smart raster levels, which are going to comprise the vast majority of your animated levels in Tahoma, I would venture to say, are essentially, no matter how you slice it, nothing more or less ever than a single flat pixel grid. Which means that my sketch and the ink that I'm now placing over top of it are occupying the same space. In other words, my black pixels are displacing my red pixels. Okay, to which I say, okay, that's fine. I couldn't possibly care less. That's not a problem. But it becomes a problem a little bit in Tahoma because of the way it decides whether, like, for me, these black lines should ruthlessly displace the red lines. But right here you saw it. Right there you saw the flaw. See that? It's almost like, it's really, really strange too, because this option overall is turned on. It might be useful. Let me see here. Can I drag this? I don't know how you change. Gosh, where's Darren when I need him? How do we change the palette ordering? That's not what I just meant to do. But anyway, okay, so it's possible that if you had this in palette ordering, that maybe, I'll bet you it won't work though. That seems to be working. Well, maybe not. Let me see. Let me check something here. Okay, so this is this color. Okay. I should probably just delete that one. Can I hit the delete key? Oh, you can't, right. You can't delete number 0. Okay. Yes. Okay, so now this is interesting. Okay, so it's in palette order, and it was previously overall, but in either case, it was behaving the same way, which is, as you can see, I'm actually drawing right now, but it's kind of sort of got to decide. Do I really want to overwrite those red pixels or not? Do I really want to? Or, you know, what does Dave really want to do? Now, he probably doesn't really want to replace those red pixels with black ones. No. So, but, okay, so the problem I'm describing somewhat snarkily has been present in OpenToonz ever since OpenToonz was released. I've never seen it not have this issue. And for me, it's a pretty dumb issue to have. If I'm gonna paint, you see, that's the way it should look. Right? Okay. It just works. It just draws, right? But if there's already some color there, we're not really sure if we want to let you through or not. It's very stupid to me. But now let's as long as we're here and we're messing with it, why don't we check a couple things that may inform how we view this problem. Number one, it could be hitting the B key. It could be that if we turn the hardness, well, wait, the hardness is up all the way. Okay, that's strange, because that's got some softness in it. What if we turn this down? Oh, that's really soft. Okay, so I was about to go down the rabbit trail of chasing the hardness rabbit. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So I would just leave it as it is. This is a problem that makes getting it's really silly, because it means that getting really good looking ink lines is actually almost impossible. You know, it's like only one of the 3 or 4 most important things that your animation software should definitely do well, right? One of the 3 or 4. And by the way, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do that with this color. I should just like make this green or something so that I can see it. Yeah, I see what I did. Anyway, now that's my fault. I'm gonna blame that one on Tahoma. But yeah. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is you have to use multiple layers or levels if you want really good clean ink. Just because the way it I see it as being stupid only because when, you know, under what circumstances would what we're seeing, would that ever be useful? You know, if there's some use case where you go, well, Dave, you're just stupid and you don't realize that this is a really good feature that lots of people are depending on day in and day out. Okay, I believe you. What's the use case? What is it? Tell me. Tell me why this is useful. I promise I'll believe you. But no, for me it's like, okay, that's really, really stupid. And again, it's always been there. So algorithmically, just to be, you know, perfectly clear, algorithmically what should be happening is that whenever you're drawing, and I know it's not doing this, I'm sure it's not doing this under the hood. What really should be happening on a smart raster level is when you draw with another color, maybe even arguably with the same color, what actually should happen is there should be an invisible canvas that you're drawing onto that then gets composited over top of the actual final canvas for that smart raster level. That would solve the problem because it would accommodate the alpha channel and the, you know, in other words, the relative transparency of the you know, the pixels you're drawing. You know, we're kind of making the assumption here with Tahoma, I mean the developers would be, that no one would ever want to put their sketch and their final ink on the same level and then just erase the sketch. But consider this. If I hit the erase key and I hit selective, then Tahoma is nice enough to only erase the currently selected palette color. If Tahoma has that capability, then does it not imply that there are innumerable situations where you would want to just go ahead and, you know, just keep everything on the same level, you know? What's the big deal? And the big deal is, by the way, I'm curious about one thing here. Why is, there must be a translation. Wait, there is no translation. Oh, maybe it's because of the camera. Let me check something. Yeah, it's because of the camera. Okay, I was confused because my drawing was going outside the border of what the camera sees. And that's because there's actually some camera animation on this scene. So, again, that one's definitely my fault. Okay, so now in an earlier shot, I did give Gulick some cuffs. So, there's that. All right, let's go through and we'll make this color a little different. Fill that. Okay, I want to go into regular mode. Boom. Oops, not rectangular. Just normal. Normal. Okay, there's that. My actual ink should be something like that. We need another color here. Slightly darker, I believe. Oh, come on. Really? We've got a leak? Okay, so if you're wondering why I was ranting about the issue with the way it manages multiple colors interacting with each other. I mean, think about the logic of it. Granted, it's problematic to program in the sense that you have to accommodate anti-aliasing on your edges. So that means there's always going to be some blur of one pixel into another. Okay, I get that. I get that that does complicate things. It could be, in fact, I'll even speculate the following. I'll bet you, watch this, I'll bet you, if I draw a line here, okay, so this is, okay, so that's a fill. Okay, so the problem that I was describing only happens when lines are fighting each other, okay? So I want to be really clear about this. Okay, so in other words, you see how it thinned out right there? And if I don't draw it really hard, if I don't press really hard, it's all you know, there's this battle going on to decide who gets to take precedence. I'll bet you if you select pencil, why they call it pencil, I don't know. But it would make more sense to make this toggle instead of being pencil. What does pencil do? Pencil does this. It gets rid of anti-aliasing. Actually, yes. So there's no anti-aliasing when you use the quote-unquote pencil mode. It would make more sense to call this soft and then have it on when it's doing its thing versus off when it's anti-aliased. Soft would make more sense probably for most people, I would think. But anyway, I suspect that if you hit pencil, watch this. Yeah. So if you turn off the anti-aliasing, so basically what you have going on under the hood is that Tahoma's developers never took the time, basically, and it's not really Tahoma, it's OpenToonz, going back several years actually. Not trying to be snarky here, I'm just telling you this is clearly what's going on, is they never really took the time to figure out how to accommodate two different colors occupying a common space or one overwriting the other with the anti-aliasing you know, being calculated in that process. The solution is very, very simple, which is that you would have so let's call this a canvas. So it's a flat it's just a grid. You know, it's just a grid of pixels. Okay. It's a flat two-dimensional grid, and each box in the grid is occupied by either no color or a color. And it could be partially transparent color too. Okay, so now the problem is that when another color comes along and overrides that, do we give this pixel to the red, or do we say, well, you didn't press hard enough, so we're still going to give this pixel to the black? That's the problem that they have. If you said, well, okay, we have a canvas that this appears on, And we maintain a bunch of intelligence about the colors that are occupying those pixels, and that's how we get our smart palette. So what you really want to do is anytime you're drawing onto this layer, you're actually drawing onto a virtual canvas that you cannot see, that is then composited over top of the real canvas. And every time you lift up your pencil, it goes ahead and composites it in, and at that point it makes the decision about how the anti-aliasing, because as you can see right there again, it won't cover the red, but if I press hard, it does. You know, so it's pretty goofy actually. Only because the algorithm that's currently in place is basically, there's very few cases where the way they decided to do it would in fact be useful. In fact, I can't actually think of any case where what we have here, this mess, and the reason I brought it up again is look at the problem it caused later. By missing that little glitch right there, which only happened because of the problem I'm describing, we've got a leak, and now my entire downstream process of doing ink and paint is hindered because I'm going to have to keep solving the problem of realizing that I've got leaks that I didn't realize were there. And it's all happening because OpenToonz/Tahoma doesn't really know how to deal with drawing a line with one color and then drawing a line with another color. Just doesn't know how to deal with it. Which is you know, really? Is what you say. You go, really? You're kidding, right? It's a joke. You're kidding. You're not, I mean, you know, you're just making this up. Means that you're always going to be dealing with leaks. So, you know, again, for me, the problem is actually solved in a different way entirely, which is that usually most of the image assets that I'm using in a scene get drawn and colored in Krita, and then just cut and pasted over here into Tahoma. So, not trying to make it into rant day. Definitely not. And look, there it goes again. I guarantee you every single one of the leaks that we have right here would not have happened. Absolutely guarantee you none of those leaks would have happened if it wasn't for this internal compositing issue that languishes on and on. Okay, so let's back up. Okay, so now the one question would be kind of having to do with shadows. I would say in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just do this sort of the old school anime way, if you will, which is I'm just going to add some extra colors and hard code the shadows in, just because it's a really tiny little shot and it's going to be faster and easier to just do that. Now the flesh tone, I probably could just darken it in general because yeah, I think I'll add another color. But this is why I don't do the shadows this way normally, is because it does create a bunch of extra palette entries, which is hardly the end of the world, but it is just one more thing you have to manage, right? So here, same situation. We'll make this slightly darker. Take the B key, go oopie-doo, and fill that. Okay, so now that's basically fine. And then we're going to just use the Animate tool. We're not going to use the plastic tool or anything like that. Okay, so we'll go down here to the end. And what we're going to do is just hit the Animate tool. I generally like to set the center in some sort of intelligent place, which for this would probably be where his elbow is. Just tends to be good practice. And then lately I find myself working in all mode, which gives you a widget for manipulating everything. So this is going to be off screen, and here I think we want to go Control tilde. Yeah, okay. So now I can just drag this to here and to here, and I think, and I would say as far as the rotation goes, that's really not quite right. So I think that's probably all we need. Yeah. Now he actually goes like this. So which suggests that this is actually kind of some flawed continuity. It's gonna look weird. Trust me, you might think it's okay. Hey, dead pianist, and hey, Appa, yeah, second. Appa, yeah, second. you're new here. Welcome to the party. Um, Making 3D drawings in 2D and maintaining colors is really hard. Um, yeah, so you look for ways to make it not so hard, and if I take your point, I mean I think you're referring to kind of the things I was talking about earlier with the palette and stuff. Um, to finish my earlier sentence, to have him move and then stop moving, you know, like literally come to a stop and then go like this, is a little disconcerting. It's actually not a horrible crime because it is conceivable that he would then, once she steps forward, that he would then lean into it and give it to her. But yeah, I want to be a little careful about that. So I think I'm done, actually. Let me hit Control-Shift-R to render the whole bloody thing, and then let's go over to the show and see what we have. So that would be here. Delish. Yes, my lord. Okay, interesting. I think his hand needs to be a little higher. Yeah, so I think his landing position probably should be like this. Now, here's the good thing about Tahoma as far as the having the render settings baked into the shot means you can make one change like this and just hit Control R, and literally in the time it takes for me to switch screens, it's already rendered and it's cut into the show, which is great. Okay, so I want to check the timing here a little bit. Boom. Okay. Okay, so this is a subtlety, but it's something worth mentioning, I think, especially for people that want to do animation or create a show or edit video, whatever. Both of these items happening at the exact same time makes both of them comparatively weak motions. And generally in acting and comedy especially, what I find is that you want to think in terms of a sequence generally. It's not a 100% rule, but in fact, if you want to create distraction, in other words, if this was some crazy anime, if we were watching Fairy Tale right now, you might see a bunch of things that are animated in loops here in the background, but they're there specifically to create a distraction in a sense of sort of noise and excitement and all this sort of thing. But generally within the framework of your key acting that's going on the screen, if you have two things happening at once, both of them are rendered less effective. Okay? Now, this will turn out to be the exception to the rule, right? It'll turn out what I'm saying didn't work for this shot, but I suspect it will, which is this. She should lean forward and then the bowl comes to her. Is going to be more effective than the way I did it there. So that's pretty easy to do. We'll just say, let's put Golik's destination here and his starting point here. Okay, now that does introduce the question of whether this should be slightly lower. I actually wonder if it's almost like, it almost feels like there's a little bit of a I'm getting way too metaphysical here. I was gonna say sort of almost a feeling of contempt if he's not being careful to hold the the bowl level. Okay, yeah, that's going a little too far there, Dave. Control-Shift-R. Let's just render it and see what we've got. I think we're okay now. Okay. All right. So now the only thing. Let me see. I hate to belabor this so much, but I'm still not happy with it. And so, anyway, getting back to Dead Pianist's comment. I mean, I think you know you have to, you know, understanding value and color, which I don't consider myself to be great at, is really important. And I think limits are important. Like, in other words, when you're drawing or painting, to give yourself a limited number of colors and a limited number of values, maybe even just like half a dozen, is really a great starting point much of the time. Because you, yeah, there we go. We got it. Sorry, didn't show you guys that. Boop, boop. There you go. Okay, on to the next. I guess what I was actually trying to say to Dead Pianist is that the way I did the shadows here on Fala, but with just a black overlay that's then, and you could use overlay mode or some other blending mode to make the shadow color more interact more with the underlying colors. Like if this was in overlay mode instead of multiply, it would also kick up the saturation. So you can always do stuff like that. But using a black overlay just makes everything way simpler as far as dealing with shadows. And so, and it greatly reduces the number of colors you have to manage in your palette. You know, here, if I didn't do the shadows this way, then I would have to have an additional color for every single one of these palette entries. Each one just a little bit darker. You know, it becomes a bit of a management chore. Okay, so she actually has a line of dialogue here. She says, "Right away, Lord." Okay, so she's going to go, and of course the plastic tool is affecting her as well. But I basically want to start about here, and let's just put in the mouth, and we're going to do the standard anime mouth approach. So B key, boom. Okay. Going forward to normally with lip sync I will do what I usually don't do, which is turn on onion skins just so I can see where the previous mouth shape was. So I've explained this yesterday, but I'll do it again just to be complete. So what I call anime lip sync, this is actually not quite big enough. Anime lip sync is, where are we here? Let's go N. Okay. Is almost closed mouth shape, but a little bit open, open, more open. Okay, so the algorithm is this. If you take the lip sync that you're doing and you go open, more open, open, more open, little bit open. Open, more open, open, more open, little bit open. So it's a 5-key cycle that uses 3 drawings. That pattern can be overlaid on top of any dialogue under the sun and it will work. And I use that technique because for 2 reasons. Number one is it is an anime convention. It is actually what people sort of expect to see nowadays. But more importantly, it accommodates the fact that the show may ultimately be translated into other languages. And by the way, I very much expect that it will be. So then that's all, right? Okay, so we'll stretch this out here. And now the question is, did we make it long enough? All right, let's find out. And by the way, this should be, what I'll do is I'll go to another layer or level, stretch that out, and then drag it in. Okay, so now she's got the closed mouth. And she should say, "Right away, Lord." Yeah, that works. Okay, so now we go Control up arrow, back up out of the shot, and probably just hit Control R. I think we're probably good to go here. Let's transition back over to here. Back over to the edit. And she says, "Right away, Lord. Right away, my Lord." Perfect. Okay, well, I say perfect. It's not perfectly perfect, and the reason it's not perfectly perfect is because I'm seeing that her mouth actually should be a little bit more transparent. The color should be slightly more transparent. It's just not quite there in terms of the transparency, which is a little surprising. I would say this. It actually is about correct, but there is color correction on the final edited shot that's darkening it slightly. So I'm just going to go with that. In fact, because we want to be OCD, we'll go ahead and use a nice round number like 100. And then hit Control R, Control Shift R, I should say, and see if that looks better. Ah, that's interesting. Okay. Um, I just discovered something really, really cool and interesting about Tahoma that I did not know before. This is actually super, super cool, and it gives you a really, really interesting reason to use subscenes. When I rendered this a moment ago, it actually rendered it based on the requirements of the subscene, so none of the background was in there. Now you might go, well, that's not that useful. That could definitely be pretty useful because it allows you to solo your characters. It'd be like the analog in Blender would be to put each of your characters in its own grease pencil object, and then let's just say hypothetically that whenever a specific grease pencil object is selected, that's all that renders. That could be actually quite useful in a lot of circumstances. So anyway, the long story short though is you want to be up out of your sub-hex sheet or your sub-scene before you render. And as you can see, that render took slightly longer. Well, you couldn't see it because I was on the wrong screen, but okay, so now these are back, and there's Fildish. Yes, my lord. Things are moving along. I'm liking it. Okay, there is the argument to be made that this shot is feeling a little bit flat. Oh my goodness. That definitely feels a little better. But, and actually, you know, that's a bit of a win because I was commenting the last time I live streamed about the overlay on Monkey that gives this little gradient to his color. Looked a little, the white was too white, I guess you'd say. But now with a little bit of a gamma correction, which did kick up the saturation, now Monkey looks good. Yeah, I'll take it. So, double win. Fix the color, and I do not think that looks good. So here's what I'm going to do. This color correction is added to the entire clip. Therefore, if I just split the clip, and now I hit Control-Alt, and adjust my edit point, okay, now the color correction the color correction plugin has been duplicated. So now I can grab this one and make a little bit of a custom change to this one. So this one isn't quite so extreme insofar as gamma is concerned. In fact, I can turn it off completely. It's actually not needed for that shot. So our one shot just turned into two shots. Okay, so the only thing remaining today, well, I should say this morning. How long have we been working here? An hour and 10 minutes, no big deal. Would be the Golic shot needs a background. So let's save all. Take a sip of our coffee. Okay, I got a question for you guys. This is probably a silly question. Okay, so now I just turned on my webcam. Okay, now you get to see my beautiful, beautiful face. My question for you guys is, how important is that? Is having the webcam on and being able to see my face actually important to you? And I know this is a very strange question, because to give me the answer that I'm looking for, whether it's positive or negative, yes or no, it doesn't matter. You have to really, really think about what you're trying to get out of watching. In other words, is seeing the human being actually, does it enhance your experience in terms of enjoying watching someone live stream? For me, I'm not sure. If it was me, I think I think I would tend to want the webcam on. I think. There's the webcam. So you guys, if you don't mind, chime in. Tell me what you think about that. If it's like a really big deal, I'll leave the darn thing on. If it's not a big deal, I tend to like leaving it off. I don't know. There's just sort of something about a little bit of a measure of, greater measure, I should say, of anonymity that there's something about that that I like. But I don't know. But I don't care. It's not that big of a deal, right? So you guys tell me what you think. All million of you that are watching my live stream. Yeah, there's 4. Okay, so let's go to the next shot, which is 487. So file, 487, and we will save all. And I guess the question is whether the whether the background, we really can't duplicate the background. The question really is, do we need to do a whole brand new painting? And I need to look at I'm looking at the script right now on my other screen. I guess I could drag it down here, but I'm looking at the script because I'm pretty sure that both Fala and the soldier have left the room. Yeah, and she's left alone. Yeah, so the soldier is not there. Okay, so here's what we can do then. Actually, for this shot, nobody's really weighing in about the webcam thing. So if you guys would, I'm going to say it again, just because, you know, Mr. Redundant here. Please weigh in. You tell me, guys. Is the webcam being on in some way? Is it indifferent? Doesn't matter? Completely irrelevant? Is it better? Is it more fun if I can look into the camera and talk to you? Or is it better if you say, well, he's pretty ugly, but his voice is like okay, so if the camera's off, we just generally feel better. We enjoy it more because we don't have to know what that guy looks like, right? So there's 3 potential answers. Yes, love the webcam. No, definitely get rid of it. Or absolutely does not matter one way or the other. Weigh in and let me know. And somebody weigh in soon, because that will create social pressure for all the other people watching to also make their opinions known. Okay, so what I'm thinking I'm going to do here is I've got in my image viewer, I will jump over here to show you the image viewer. If we look in the extras folder at all the mayhem that Tahoma has engaged in over the months, we will discover that our background image with the curtains closed is in fact in here. So let me just scan through here. I mean, the one downside is that on a large project, this folder gets pretty darn full. You know, there's a lot of images in here, but usually at a glance you can kind of see what you're looking for. So here it is. This is the image I want. Now if I drag this into Tahoma, it is going to become an image sequence, because it already is an image sequence. There's actually 4 background pictures in the sequence. Okay, so the one I want is this one. All right, so I'm going to go like that. Now I just heard the postman say something outside, which suggests to me that, is Valerie out there? Maybe she is. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is crop this to the camera. You know, it's actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Okay, so now I'm going to hit the A key, scale this up, and basically that's pretty much what we're going for. I want to make it look like the tent is that the tent is backlighting him. And I probably want to make this, I'm scaling this up so that Golik winds up looking roughly like he's the correct size relative to the original background painting. Okay? And then for this shot, I'm going to cheat it a little bit. I don't want much of that balloon showing. A little bit's okay because it's just sort of like noise that, and I don't want a tangent here either. So the question is, do we go with this or do we go with this? Me thinks this. So is this 100% accurate to the original painting? Probably not 100%, but it's pretty close. Okay, so now I'm going to hit F3, go into the effects Column 1. And by the way, this group can be exploded. I'm going to ungroup that. Okay, and this is going to be a blur. Once again, my guess is that for the scale of this drawing, probably a 20 pixel blur is appropriate. And there it is. Okay, so now if we look at this, that really looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it, folks. Let's let it play. Come to your senses. So he says, I see you finally come to your senses. Cool. That's it. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-R and jump over to my show and see if that actually got the background all dialed in for me. Okay, it does feel like it's probably a little too... he's cropped a bit. He is cropped a bit. I had forgotten about that. I'm going to go ahead and pull that out a little bit more, actually. I think I cropped him too much. But... yeah, it feels like the blur is a little too much. Josh says, okay, Alberta says, hey, thanks, guys. By the way, I've been busy here and I didn't look at the notes or the chat. Keep the webcam. I'm on the fence. Like, well, normally a webcam is preferred, but you are pretty ugly. I don't think it would bother me if it was off. I'd be more comfortable with that. Right on. It's really not a question of being comfortable. I guess it looks, let me see, is it on? I guess it is on. So, well, I am a pretty good looking guy, so we'll just go with it. most of the YouTube live streaming career, the webcam has been on. Okay, so I'm going to change this to 10 pixels instead of 20 and just see if it looks better. And I'm not even going to preview it. I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-R because the rendering is so freaking fast that now we can come over here and by clicking, it's going to refresh. So, boop. Yeah, that's better. Now that looks pretty good. Now this is a good example of where, let's actually jump over here and put it on the big screen. This is a good example of where the anime style, a glow effect behind him would actually look really, really cool. Pen says, doesn't matter, keep it. Okay, so anyway, I really thank you guys who have weighed in. Because it shows me, you know, that you're listening, right? You're paying attention. I'm not just like kind of talking to the wind here. Okay, so I'm going to turn this on preview mode, and basically after we do the following step, I would say that I'll be signing off, and that'll be it for this live stream session. So it looks like it's going to probably turn out to be an hour and a half. Okay, so what I want to do is two things. I think I want to use a body highlight and actually see if having almost a double rim light looks better. I have a feeling that's going to punch him up a little bit. So how would we do that? Well, in the effects schematic, we're going to take Golek, which is column 2. What is column 3? Column 3 is his mouth. Okay. All right, so I'm going to regroup these after all. It's really, really kind of nice. I had showed you guys earlier how you could comp over top of the scene, you know, comp something over for the shadows of Fala to the output. You also can use an over plug. Layer blending over to combine layers or combine levels into a single node that you can then run through an effect. Okay, so what I was about to say, and by the way it turns out was incorrect, is that, wait a second, here's an even easier way. Just grab the layers that all have to be combined, or the levels, and just group them. But guess what? I just discovered it doesn't work. You can group them, but once you've grouped them, if you right mouse click here to add an effect, it doesn't work. You cannot pipe this. Dragging this, like see what happens when I drag this, it creates a new connection. Guess what? When you drag from a group, nothing happens. So actually I didn't even say it, but basically I was incorrect on what I was thinking. Okay. Therefore, this is actually important. We need to combine these together, so let's do it in the simplest way possible, which is layer blending over. Okay? Over. And we'll delete that connection and we're done. Okay, so now let's just check the render, and what we see is that we've got them in the wrong order. Okay, so the mouth needs to be on top. And so now let's just go ahead and grok this out. What this means is that when you're using the OverFX plugin, the ordering of these nodes, these points of entry, because you can combine as many layers as you want, the ordering, the stacking order for the OverFX is precisely what you would intuitively think. The stuff that's highest up on the stack is on top. Some software works the opposite. Like Blender 2.79 works the opposite of Blender 2.8. With 2.8, it's like this, where stuff on top in the grease pencil layers is on top. In 2.79, you think of it a different way. You think of it as your signal is pouring down through the plugin, and so the last thing to come out, it gets composited on top. For some software, that's the way it works. It tends to be more intuitive for me if it works this way, where stuff that's higher up is on top. But you sort of get used to it. Anyway, having done that, we've taken all of the layers of Golik and combined them into one. How wonderful. As Professor Farnsworth would say, that's very good news, everyone. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add the light body highlight effect. Ooh, diggity dog. Now what I think would be really interesting, be interesting to consider, this is a rare case where the settings were almost perfect right out of the gate. I'm going to actually make this more like 15 instead of 22. Yes, but boy, I like that. So now what we want to do, this is the part that's going to be tricky. We've got to figure out a way to create a glow behind him. So this is where using the schematic becomes a little more complicated, and I guess if you're into this, a little more fun. Okay? So the way I think of it is like this. We know that what's coming out of this node right here is essentially Golik. Okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add, and there's more than one way to do this. There's probably many ways to do it. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do an image adjustment, adjust levels. And I'm going to pipe this into here. Now if I bypass Golik like this, if I take that off, I've lost my body highlighting, but importantly, I can take my alpha output and turn it down to nothing. And okay, that's not what I meant to do. I'm sorry. I meant to do the RGB output. Blah, blah, blah. Black. Okay? Well, that's actually not what we want either. What we really want is probably that. Turn it white. Okay. And now what we can do is add a blur to that, whatever blur we feel is appropriate. And now what we want to do is we want to use the over effects. I think Darren told me if I grab this, can I do Control C, Control V? Ah, shoot. I forgot what the trick is to copying these, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go, I'm going to add another over. So there is a glow effect in Tahoma, so you don't have to do it this way. I am essentially rolling my own glow effect. So now what I'm going to do is take this blurred guy, and I'm going to say we actually want this to be here, and we want this to be here, because we said that we want the picture of Golik to be on top of the blur we just created, or the glow. And now when we pipe that into our scene, we see the glow behind him. Works perfectly. So that was easy. So it's a great example of every darn thing you ever thought you wanted to be able to do in Tahoma. Trust me, folks, you can do it. It's all here. You just have to be a little bit clever. Okay, you know, for example, conceivably, I could see where you'd want to shift the glow over to the right just a little bit. I've never done that. I've never done any kind of a translation through the schematic, but maybe there's a way. Utility, pass through. Gosh, what would it be? Distort, maybe? I don't know. I don't think there is a straight translation plugin to just like, you know, change the XY position of your image. So anyway, something to think about. So now there is one more problem. What I really want to do here, I could add another adjustment to make the glow a little more transparent. What's a little strange about this situation is I actually want it both over and under. And I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go like this, and like this. So now I've actually got two instances of the glow, both over and under. And what I'm guessing is if I just start dialing down the alpha here, I'm going to find the sweet spot where it looks like a nice softening glow that partly bleeds over top of him. Okay, so yeah, forget that. We're not going to do that. Well, we're not going to do it that way. Okay, so this image adjustment, we'll keep it simple. We'll say this image adjustment was to turn everything white, and now what we have to do is we've got to add more image adjustments to adjust how bright things are. I tend to not use brightness and contrast and whatnot. I don't even actually use curves in Tahoma that often, even though they're quite useful. I almost always just go straight to adjust levels. So what I'm going to do is delete the connection on the top for the moment. And then we'll say what we want to do here is just turn down our alpha. If you turn it down all the way, of course, the glow disappears completely. Probably something like that. Something like that. Okay, and now here we're going to do, actually, we're going to do, put this here. Tahoma's thinking for me a little too much because that, I have to reconstruct that. So then we're going to add a level adjustment for the top as well. Frankly, this is less useful because what you really want to do is just get the edges, not the actually, let's try this. I'm going to try something completely different. Okay. For the moment, we'll leave that as it is. I just wonder, though, if the glow effect would actually give us what we're wanting here. Let's give it a crack. So I am going to add light glow. I literally have no idea if this is going to work, but let's give it a try. So I'm going to run light and source. See what the parameters are. Results in some distortion. I think I'm going to let it go. I don't think I want to belabor this because I don't think I'm going to get that much of a win out of it anyway. Having the glow bleed over him is not that big of a win, simply because the body highlight effect is already sort of giving us that effect anyway. So methinks I'm going to leave it as it is. I would say that the transparency of the body highlight effect might want to be throttled up a bit, so it sort of marries into the other colors a little more nicely. And my glow effect, yeah, that makes him look angelic, which is of course really crazy. With Golik is definitely not angelic. Interesting to discover, though, right now with all of these plugins that we have going on, how does that affect our render times? One wonders. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-R and let's find out. Okay, there was a little pre-computing to do, but basically it's still really fast. Okay, so I think our shot is done. I see you finally come to your senses. Okay, with the caveat that this shot needs some contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and add my standard color corrector, which I often do, and I'm thinking just a gamma adjustment will do the trick. And that's feeling pretty good. I'm watching my levels over here. We don't really want to get below 10. And oftentimes you might want to do a gain or an offset, but in this case a gamma adjustment kind of gives me the best of all worlds because it sort of kicks up my contrast while saturating my color a little bit more too, which is not always a good thing because if you're in the shadows, your color is actually harder to see. Should be less saturated. but in this case, that feels pretty good. I'm looking at these monitors here as well. You'll see that the colors are throttled around 40. Generally, if they get going too hot, things start looking stupid. So in this case, I'm going to leave this at 1 and just crank the gamma down to 0.6, and with that, I'm done. So thanks for tuning in, folks. It's been an hour and a half, been a good session. Got several shots finished, and with that, I will say come back next time. It's gonna be nothing but fun. Be sure and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't, just because it's really fun to click on buttons. Clicking is all kinds of fun, especially if you're a Mac user. So make sure you